Hi everyone, and welcome to the Dental Podcast from Denplan. This week I have the pleasure of introducing Dr Niki Keyhani from Horsham Dental Studio, who took some time out of her day to speak with Isabel Johnston about her journey into Denplan, how she joined us joining Denplan Plus, her fantastic BDC, her future of dentistry, and a little bit about her background of how she got into dentistry and what led her to become what we believe to be one of the youngest practice owners in the country.
I just wanted to sort of really start with just getting to know you a bit more and just tell a bit of background about yourself and when and how you got into dentistry, really.
Of course. So how I got into dentistry, I think for me, I'm one of those very, very odd people who has always known this is something what they wanted to do. I was that, strange 3-year-old who was excited to be brushing her teeth and pursuing this kind of career. And essentially because I had my mother as my role model who is a dentist and saw her work, and that's kind of what I wanted to aspire to be. And as I got older and kind of researched a little bit more, it just seemed like it was really suited to me, and that's what I wanted to do. I had one goal. I knew what I wanted and pursued it, kind of took it from there. I had like a little checklist in my head of, get the grades, do your extracurriculars, tick, tick, tick. And then finally made it into uni and got the dream.
Brilliant. And when did you finish your degree?
2017. So a fairly recent graduate, as most people would say.
And then what happened sort of since you graduated? So I understand obviously you now own a practice. Do you want to tell us a bit more about Horsham Dental Studio, or is there a few steps before that?
There were a few steps. For me, I always knew that owning a dental practice was something I wanted to do. That was a definite. I didn't necessarily expect it to be so soon, but I'm happy with the journey that I kind of had, and I had the opportunity and I couldn't really let it pass. So when I graduated in 2017, I did my training year, so my foundation training, as most dentists would do. And during the year, I also did a postgraduate certificate, so in primary dental care. And then I kind of took quite an academic route as well. So alongside of working, I was doing a part-time diploma at the Eastman in restorative dental practice. And as I was setting up the practice, I decided to also apply to specialize, because as a dentist, you're often told it's business or it's academics. Which one do you want to be, clinical or academic? And I kind of despised that decision-making process. I hated that I had to choose. I liked both elements. So I decided to set up the practice and I applied to specializing at the same time. I opened up the practice in August of 2020. So we're coming up to our 1-year anniversary. And I started uni again for 3 days a week the following month. So there was a lot of balls in the air, but it worked out right. It worked out well for me.
That sounds brilliant. There's a lot going on then.
Yeah. I like to be busy. I thought, there's not enough stress or things going on in my plate. Let's just add a few more. Just decided to do it all in one go, really.
And in terms of obviously getting involved with Denplan, so I understand that you obviously having worked with Denplan before you took on your own practice, but how does sort of your journey with us look?
I think for me, Denplan just makes sense. And when I explain it to patients, that's essentially what I say to them. I say, you're getting the benefits of private dentistry. You get the benefits of appointments in the evenings or potentially on the weekend. You get the benefit of all that private dentistry provides, all the treatments that you can't normally get on the NHS, but at an affordable rate and in a way where you're going to get continuity of care and you've got that kind of safety net in a sense. And it pretty much is, to me, a no-brainer. So I think when you kind of explain it to patients and really describe what to me is a no-risk situation, they tend to be on board pretty quick.
And in terms of sort of from your side of things, how, obviously taking on the new practice, how did we support you in terms of setting up the contract, obviously from the beginning side of things, how does it look for you and sort of from the dental perspective side of things?
Well, for me, I think that's one of the reasons I chose Denplan, because you guys have a really good support team. So as soon as I kind of reached out to Emma, wanted to get involved, she quickly came and visited me. And I think the best thing was that she really listened to what I needed. So she was kind of very helpful in the sense that she just said, whatever you need, let me know and I can put it into action. So in terms of marketing, in terms of banners, in terms of leaflets, she was really there and instrumental in making sure that as a new practice, I could explain the benefits of Denplan to a lot of patients who've probably never heard of it previously. So yeah, that was fantastic. She was supportive all of the way.
That's brilliant, obviously, from that side of things. And in terms of, you understand, so you've also started straight away on our Denplan Plus membership, is that right?
Yes, yeah, so that's great because we get a lot of benefits, which is fantastic. Yeah, so we've had a few visits from Emma as well to the practice to explain to our staff how we can discuss Denplan and how we can talk about it with patients and how it works within the practice. So for example, in my practice, my reception team are often the ones, because they're the first line who talk to patients, who can sign it up. So it's nice to have Denplan Plus in place where they also know what rewards they can gain for the practice as a whole, so that the whole team is involved and they can see the rewards and how Denplan can help the practice.
And in terms of sort of, is your plan to grow patients? I know obviously you've got some NHS patients as well, etc. But is your plan to then grow steadily the number of Denplan patients in terms of that loyalty for your side of things, or how do you envisage sort of the next coming months coming up to your year?
Yeah,
obviously been an interesting time to start your practice. Just to add to that.
Yes, it's been a great timing. Definitely. I mean, for us, we've got a very limited NHS contract, so Denplan is really something that is important to us and vital within our infrastructure. So yeah, definitely Denplan is something we are planning to encourage and grow further and further. And I mean, Emma helps us with that in that she gives us our monthly target, what we need to do and what we need to achieve. So we always know that we're on target and we know that we're working at the right level. And yeah, so it's been fantastic from there. And then obviously I've been involved with Denplan, the next generation as well. So that's had a lot of separate benefits to the practice, but a lot of benefits overall.
And that was actually leads well into sort of where I was going next in terms of the Next Gen Dental Group, which obviously we were keen to speak about today. So just a little bit more background in terms of how you got involved and how come you feel so passionate about helping younger dentists, obviously having just come out quite recently yourself, but
yeah,
what's sort of your background for your involvement, first of all?
So I received an email from Catherine, from what I remember, and in the beginning it was kind of just saying, this is what we're thinking about doing, inspiring future dentists, and giving a little bit of background on what the meeting was going to be about. But the meeting itself was really, really fruitful, and I think the thing that we touched on in the meeting, which was especially hit home for me, was really the discussion about women and young women in dentistry, because I'm quite unique in the sense that I have my mother as my role model and as my mentor, who I can ask as many questions as I want to. But there aren't many female principal dentists who are able to mentor or give information. Unfortunately, we still do have a lot of male principal dentists who tend to have a certain lifestyle or image, and they tend to mentor young men or people who tend to be in the same image as them. So to be able to have this platform where there's more women involved, showing younger girls that there are female dentists who are in positions of leadership, is so vital within our careers, and I think will make a massive change. So it was and truly an honor to be part of something like that. And I can't wait to see where the group goes.
And obviously, you've only had your first meeting. I know you've got more planned for the coming months. But in terms of just some of those things you said around that, the key importances of having a mentor from your own experiences, what benefit does it add? Well, has it added for yourself? And do you think it adds for people coming out, particularly in this current climate within dentistry?
I think it's huge. And I think the sad thing is we don't talk about it enough. I mean, the reality is that majority of graduates within dentistry these days are female. And unfortunately, I don't think there is enough support for them or enough mentoring for them. And it is different as a woman being, within this career than a man, unfortunately. So to have that kind of support network, or have a mentor where you're able to ask them questions where they've had that similar experience to you, is, you can't put that into words. Unfortunately, we do come across a lot of bias that may be with staff, but unfortunately with patients. And you need a female mentor quite often, or someone who's been through the same experience, to be able to really navigate you through that difficult time. Because I think it was something that Catherine and I discussed at the last meeting, or touched on, that was really, I think, a really important statement, which was, if I right now had to give advice to a younger female dentist, unfortunately, I would say, one of the main things I would say was, grin and bear it for the moment, and it will get better. But there isn't a safe place or a network, I feel, just yet for this group of dentists. So hopefully that's what we're hoping to provide for them.
And that's, is that sort of a key thing that you think holds people back? Because obviously we know there's an issue with people entering into the dentistry profession. So do you think there is some sort of stigma or notorious conversations around this that could, having that support there and being more visible, do you think that could really help the industry going forward?
100%. I'm not sure if it's something that can hold them back, but it's definitely a lot of challenges that they have to experience. They have to navigate tougher waters and a lot of aspects to be able to achieve similar levels of success. So to be able to make those, barriers a little bit easier for them, and open a few doors and say, this would be an easier way to get through. If I could contribute even the tiniest amount to that, then, that would be my career deemed a successful one, definitely.
Brilliant. You touched a bit upon your mother in terms of obviously her huge impact on, well, your career choice, first of all, but in terms of her mentoring and you being lucky to have had her. So what are sort of some key specific, have you got some examples of where you really feel that that strong mentoringship has supported you in either sort of starting your practice or within your early days of your professional career? There are probably loads of examples, but if there was a few that stand out from her experience.
No, of course. I mean, I've been really fortunate. Not only she is a dentist, but she's a principal, and she's most definitely a strong woman. And I think that has a lot of benefits to it. So in terms of opening the practice, there was a lot of routes where, working with a few of our organizations that you have to work with when you're opening practice, they're not necessarily the most organized, and they're not necessarily the most straightforward. So possibly having her to navigate that a little bit was, unbelievably helpful in terms of how to manage a lot of elements in terms of staffing and running the practice itself. It would have been a lot harder if she wasn't around. So definitely I owe a lot of my success to her.
And I was reading some of the notes from your first Next Gen meeting as well. And you mentioned that there's something around dentists feeling more pressured to qualify and immediately open a practice. And sort of how vital is mentoring support as part of this? Because you just touched upon a few leadership elements, etc. So in terms of opening a new practice as a reasonably newly qualified dentist, where does mentorship sit within that in order to make that work from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. I think at the moment, dentistry is really going through a change and really going through a process. And social media has definitely contributed to that. The great thing about social media is it's inspiring. I mean, we can't ignore that fact. It's inspiring. It encourages young dentists. It shows what they can achieve. It links a lot of the profession to each other. So it's got a lot of advantages. But within that, I think there really has become this environment of younger dentists in particular, who may not have even graduated yet, but they look to that and they think, why am I not achieving that now? Or why haven't I already done that? And unfortunately, although social media is great, it's not fully representative of the hard work that goes behind that image or that presentation. There's a lot of hardships. And although, you know, the beautiful waiting rooms are beautiful, at the end of the day, there's a receptionist who is working 9 to 5, and then the manager who's working till midnight, and you're working till 3 in the morning to kind of get that practice open. So I think mentoring is, you know, vital within that process, in the sense that I think a lot of young dentists want to achieve that straight away, but don't necessarily know the steps behind that image on how to get there. And that's what mentoring provides. That's the connection it can make from your start point to that dream and that image that you have, letting you know which route to take and which route is necessarily maybe a bit better, maybe a bit easier. So yeah.
Do you think there's a bit more pressure potentially on sort of getting to that, whereas before you maybe had more time? You know, you mentioned social media, and sort of is this a bit of a balance between yourself, you know, wanting to get into an ownership of a practice quicker, or is there less time to gain more experience, or how do you feel that landscape has been for you coming out? Or you said the opportunity for you just rose to get a practice. Do you think young dentists now want to get into those situations quicker, or do you think it's just a sign of the times?
I think they want to get into it quicker. I think, you know, because they have this idea of what can be achieved, they want it achieved straight away. And who wouldn't? I mean, if you see someone who is, I mean, even if you put me on paper, I am specializing in owning a practice, which is fantastic, but there's a lot of lack of sleep. There's a lot of extra hours in the lab and in the workplace. So yeah, I think there's a lot of extra pressure that goes with it. And I think it's pressure that we as a profession have put on ourselves. There's a lot of, you know, looking to each other and comparing each other to feeling where we should be within our journey. But it's important to, you know, remember that each person's journey is different, each route is different, and have to go at our own paces, especially within clinical dentistry.
In terms of the pandemic, obviously that's really something we've talked a lot about in the last 18 months, how it's really completely affected everything, including, you know, the dentistry profession and some of the aftermath from that. Do you think that's sort of changed some of your perspectives and sort of some of your views on actually accentuating the mentorship side of things?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the pandemic is unprecedented. No one could have expected something like that. It has, in my opinion, made a lot of change within how dentistry is practiced and how dentistry is run within a lot of dental practices. And although there has been a lot of changes in terms of our infection control and a lot of extra legislation and things that we need to keep on top of, in some ways, it's also allowed dentists to kind of take a pause and look at the dentistry they're practicing and not allow it to necessarily be, you know, something speedy, but something more of with time and with quality. So in terms of mentoring, I think this pandemic has forced dentistry to completely change how it's running and how it's practicing. And it's only with mentoring that a lot of dentists are going to be able to know how to navigate and which way to navigate it with the changing times.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think it's within mentorship, obviously in each profession, we could strive to have good mentorship within the start of any career, really. Within dentistry, what are sort of the key important things? So you touched upon dealing with some of the professional bodies, etc. Can we talk in a bit more detail around sort of the key things from your personal experience that have been that you've sort of needed that hands-on support, and that potentially your degree just can't, until you're in the situation, can't help you with as such?
Yeah, of course. I mean, universities do their best, but at the end of the day, the degree is quite basic in comparison to what you're going to experience when you're qualified. And dentistry isn't necessarily the most forgiving career, because immediately you're going to be working clinically and you have to answer to patients, and you have to answer to the CQC, you have to answer to the NHS, and making mistakes are not necessarily as forgiving within our profession, which is why it's important to make sure it's kind of done well and done right from the beginning. You can't make a mistake in infection control, or you can't make a mistake towards the NHS, the CQC, when you're trying to open a practice, because the practice just won't open. So it's important to get it right from the beginning. And in my case, whether that was opening the practice and making sure I had my mum on hand to get the documents right and get the legislation correct, or whether it was clinically in terms of making sure I had, at the time, a specialist to ask so that I could make sure the treatment was perfectly right for my patients. The mentor is really what allows that extra safety net to make sure that you're doing it right the first time around.
And in terms of obviously some of the benefits within the Denplan remit, obviously, and have I understood correctly that your mother was a Denplan dentist as well?
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
So obviously quite some experience between you both in terms of working with us. Is there some elements where that support comes from my side of things in terms of some of the compliance issues, etc., that you've already noticed?
Definitely. I mean, Denplan obviously has its lots of sheets and advice on the compliance. So that in itself gives you a lot of guidance on what you need to do for policies and what you need to do in terms of the regulation, which is invaluable, because in that beginning, when you've got 101 bits of forms and paperwork to complete, Denplan's really the one who navigates you and helps you through that process.
And in terms of your mom, going back to your mom a bit more and her experience, have you often had a discussion around how things have shifted? Obviously, we've touched upon that a few times, but in terms of how the support was for her versus what you're getting, do you think there's been less mentorship over the years as the industry is changing, or do you think it's sort of, are we moving in the right direction from where we were, or how do you see that landscape?
I think we are moving in the right direction. In comparison to what she experienced, obviously, there were even fewer female dentists who were to ask. So I think the message is really quite an important one. We are moving in the right direction, but that's not necessarily the right answer to give. Because although we're moving in the right direction, with all honesty, we should be there already. So we need to keep working towards that direction. We need to keep moving forward, and we need to make sure that everyone's kind of part of that movement.
And I know you obviously in the next gen group are touching upon some of these solutions, and obviously coming up hopefully with tangible things to put forward from a policy perspective. But what other ways can you see young dentists being supported by the industry? So obviously mentorship is a huge part of what we discussed, but are there sort of other key things that you've noticed that are really key to address and flag for the industry going forward?
Definitely. I mean, I think for young dentists graduating today, they're facing a lot of difficulties in the sense that, complaints and suing and that kind of culture has really been on the rise in comparison to what it was like in, for example, my mum's generation or the generation before that. So it's really about kind of supporting them in all of the elements. Dentistry isn't just clinical dentistry. They need to be supported in that aspect, but it's also about making sure they're supported in the sense that they're comfortable with patient handling and, you know, how to manage and navigate that kind of area as well. As well as, you know, if they want to go into the business aspect of things, whether that's opening a practice, and then of course there's the academic area. So there's so many places that you can take dentistry that it's really important when graduates come out of university, they feel they know how to go down each route. We can't just support them in the sense of saying, you know, if you need clinical advice, we're here, or if you decide to apply back to university, we're here, or if you decide to open a practice. We need to be able to cover all of that ground to really support them and help them within this time.
And in terms of, you talk about dealing with patients, so in your own experience, is that sort of a key, it'd be quite interesting to understand, you know, is that a key area really to explore? Because there's an element, I guess, is around learning on the ground, isn't there? Sort of going through that experience, building yourself. But is there some key things where, you know, the mentorship could add that sort of neutral voice, or how do you use it yourself with your mother in terms of that, with any patient conversations, especially talking around this complaint, well, maybe rising culture and patient demands, I guess?
I mean, I think it's huge. Ultimately, even though it's you speaking to the patient and it is experience, I do agree with that 100%. But there's still value to be had of being, for example, in a situation and going to your mentor and saying, I didn't know what to say to that patient in that time. And them helping you potentially with some of the right words to communicate, so that although your patient is well informed of the risks, as they should be, they're also feeling reassured in your hands, and you're feeling reassured on what you need to say and how you need to communicate. I've been quite fortunate in the sense that where I've been, I've had a lot of lovely patients and a lot of, you know, fantastic people, but ultimately at the end of the day, you are working with the public. And when you're working with the public, there's 101 personalities that you need to know how to manage and how to deal with. And as dentists, we're not just working with their teeth, but we're also trying to learn, you know, type A, B, C, D personalities, all of that on top of that, as well as all the other bits that we need to do. So to have a mentor to just give you that little bit of oomph and tell you what to say in that situation, or how to manage, or whether you should email them back or give them a call so that they feel reassured. At the end of the day, that experience is, you know, vital and invaluable.
So a lot of it really is also around confidence building, isn't it? By the sounds of things, in terms of
course, yeah.
And is that, so how, you sound very confident in your approach, and obviously you've got a lot of experience, but is there something around, you know, if you didn't have your mother, how do you think that support would look for you? You know, what can other graduates or sort of newly educated young dentists do? From what's your sort of ideas around how this could look, and what the industry could do to support each other?
I think dentistry is a very scary thing to come into when you first graduate and you're first getting into the career, and you get onto clinic and you're thinking about whether you need to do a rest bonded bridge or a fixed bridge. Everything else that's on top of it can feel extremely, extremely overwhelming. And even if you are a confident person, at the end of the day, you're still dealing with a bunch of situations that you've never dealt with before, and you're faced with a lot of cases that you've never faced before. So a mentor can help not only with kind of telling you what to do, but as you said, it's, you know, it's confidence boosting, it's reassuring, and it's, you know, letting you know that you're kind of on the right track, or whether you need to move away.
And obviously you'll discuss this more in the next gen group discussions going forwards, and obviously don't expect you to have all the answers here, but sort of what key things do you think around as part of the degree, setting people up with the right structure, or the industry being more open towards supporting each other, or what are we working towards from your view?
I think we're working towards A lot of things, actually. I think, as you touched on, one of the main things is how we support younger dentists. I think even as, you know, recently qualified or as older dentists, we're all recognizing that it's changing significantly. So we ourselves feel like we're having to navigate and having to deal with new situations. And we just want to make sure that younger dentists are having that same support so that they know how to go through the profession, essentially. So I think one of the main things we're going to be touching on is how we support younger dentists. Another thing I know that we're going to be touching on is how we, in particular, represent dentists fully, whether that is, you know, different genders or different races, so that we can represent the career a little bit better. And I'm sure there's going to be some discussion as well about supporting younger dentists or dentists generally in opening practice, because that's never touched on at university.
You might be a key spokesperson there, Nikki, going forward. It also makes me think sort of the other way around, really, in terms of what young dentists have to offer for the dentists that have been in the profession for a long time. Do you think there's something around some, you know, in terms of accepting that, but also in terms of how that can work vice versa?
100%. I think there is so much that young dentists nowadays, as I said, I think I'm actually going to take it back to social media, because I really do think it's inspiring. And I think younger dentists are the ones who are utilizing it. So they are kind of coming out and they're more interested in digital dentistry and all the equipment that we could use and, you know, courses and this. They seem to be really, really passionate and excited about dentistry, which is great to kind of see, because as I have become a principal, there are a lot of practices, unfortunately, out there who are used to the same regime and kind of go in and day out and keep to the same routine. So to have that kind of excitement injected back into the profession is so lovely to see. And I think there is a lot that we can provide younger dentists, but we really have to be open and understanding that there's a lot that they can give back to us.
Definitely. And in terms of your learning curve from being a principal now, so obviously you're nearly a year into that side of things.
Yeah.
What are sort of your key positive, you know, experiences or key learnings that you have really had to accelerate your growth on? I mean, one thing is starting a practice within the pandemic. You might want to talk a bit more about that, how that's felt from a first point of view.
Yeah. I think when I look back on the last few years, the last year has been the biggest learning curve for me, and the time when I've really adapted, not only as a leader, not only as a practice owner, but as a clinician. It has forced me to be in that area where not only do I need to know everything, but I need to, if I don't know it, I need to know where I get it from, and at the same time hold that space of reassuring my staff and making sure that they're well looked after. It has been an incredible journey, and definitely one I won't forget, but it has been a huge learning curve.
And you still love what you set out to do from your 3-year-old self? You're not put off yet?
Definitely. No, I'm still in it. I'm on the long haul. No, definitely. I made the right decision. I think it just suits me completely as a person and as a character. Yeah. I'm one of the strange ones.
And you talk a bit about your postgrad work. So what are you working on at the moment in terms of your own, you know, in your spare time, dare I say, in terms of your own additional qualifications? So what's the postgrad that you're doing as well?
So I had done a postgraduate certificate in primary dental care. I followed that up with the diploma in restorative dental practice. So, you know, general dentistry, but advanced. And then I decided to take that into a Master's of Clinical Dentistry within prosthodontics. So I've just finished my first year, but it's 4 years in total. And then at the end, I can say that I'm a specialist, hopefully. So yeah, that should be exciting and I look forward to.
Brilliant. And how's your mum feeling about your journey? I mean, I assume she's proud, but, you know, it'd be interesting to see what she tells you.
Yeah, no, she's very, very proud and very supportive. I think the thing for her has always kind of been to let me take the lead. I'm quite a strong-willed person, and I know definitely what I want. So I think one of the most, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit in her image, so I tell her pretty much everything. The one time I didn't inform her about something is when I actually applied for my specialist course. Because, well, I didn't know if I would get in. And it was in a time when I was just finishing my diploma, coronavirus was happening, and I was opening a practice. I didn't really want to add on to her plate. But yeah, when I got in, I told her, we had a little emotional moment and a hug, and yeah, it was nice to just kind of see her look at me and go for it. If that's what you want to do, I'm behind you, and do whatever you want to do.
Brilliant. And what's her, and I understand she's still got a big role within your practice, is that correct?
Yes. So in me specializing, I kind of had to ask her to give me a hand on the days that I'm not there. So I'm here at university 3 days a week. So she does a bit of a managerial role and checks in for me so that we can make sure everything is nice and stable at the practice.
Brilliant. And in terms of your practice then, so what do you specialize in, and sort of what do you do? General dentistry? Is there anything else that you want to sort of say about your practice that you now are a principal of?
So in the year, we've been really fortunate. I mean, the team is absolutely amazing. They really, really are. And within that year, we've been able to, add so many services into what we do. We've bought a Trios scanner, so we're going towards digital work. We do Invisalign. We do all aesthetic treatments. We do prosthodontic referrals. We do implant cases, surgical extractions. We do conscious sedation. We do some root canal work as well. So yeah, we've been able to add a long list of things to what we can provide, including facial aesthetics. Sorry, I forgot that one, facial aesthetics as well. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what else we can add on in the next year.
Oh, very brilliant, ambitious there. It's a very sort of innovative practice then in terms of the practice of the future by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was speaking to one of my friends earlier today, and I was just saying, what is the point of having a practice if you're not going to keep expanding and you're not going to keep pushing and making it better? What is the excitement? Why are you having it in the end of the day? So definitely, I just want to keep investing in it and making sure that it's a hub of dental excellence.
So how many staff are you now a manager of in your practice altogether?
Good question. Okay, so we've got 2 receptionists, I would say roughly 3 nurses, 3 associate dentists, a specialist, and a hygienist. So we add that up together.
About 10, sounds
something
right.
Something like that, yeah.
Brilliant. That's really good. I mean, it sounds like you've got so much enthusiasm and, innovation, and despite all the sort of challenges that the industry is facing, you very much, the passion is the driver. Is that?
Definitely. If I wasn't passionate about this, I wouldn't be doing it. There's no point. It takes up so much of your time and so much energy, and it's honestly the love for it that makes you care so much and make sure that you do it to such a high quality. So yeah, I think passion is really what's driven me throughout this whole thing.
And in terms of, obviously we've talked about the females mentorship, particularly given your own circumstances, etc. Do you think mentorship as a whole, though, within the industry is something that there is a lack of for males as well, and for any, we talk about diverse groups as well? Is this an issue across the board? I know obviously your passion particularly is around the female side of things, but do you think that the image is mirrored all across?
Yeah, I think, it's very easy as a dentist to ask advice of a more experienced dentist, but because there's not really a platform or something in place where there's formal mentoring, it makes it very hard for that mentorship to continue throughout your career. I mean, the way that it is at the moment is that the year after you qualify, you have your training year. So you have a mentor within that year. But you don't just need to be mentored for 1 year. You really do need it to continue throughout. And I think to have a mentor who continues that journey with you is so, so important. And although younger dentists can sometimes seek them out to make that more readily available would be a big help.
And obviously, do you think in terms of your own experience as well, in those first years of dentistry, obviously there's a lot more talk around mental health at the moment and burnout and anxiety, etc. Given the landscape, do you think it could potentially, avoid young dentists, either giving up the career early days because it's just too overwhelming? Is there something around how that structure could also help all our mental health?
I really hope so. I think all the young dentists, when you qualify, you actually understand one thing, which is, although dentistry is very social, you're constantly talking to patients, it can be one of the most lonely jobs out there, because you're in that room, you've got your nurse, but she's often continuing with her work. And that lack of connection sometimes can really feel overwhelming. So I think if mentoring kind of helps to open that communication and encourage a bit more teamwork, it would be good, because sometimes it can be a little bit about solitude, and I think a little bit more of a group environment would only be a good thing.
Brilliant. Can I be so rude and ask for your age?
Yeah, of course.
There's a good context here.
Isabel? We have to do the guessing game first.
Oh, this is where I'm not British, so this is where my Dutch impoliteness comes.
So no, don't worry. So I unfortunately I didn't have a break for anything. So I went straight from school to uni, and I went straight from uni to all of these bits. So I'm currently 27. I started opening the practice when I was 25. So I had 25 or maybe just before. So I had a year of associateship before I went into opening the practice and went into this side of things.
So I'm wondering whether you're one of the youngest owners around.
When I first opened, potentially so. When I first opened, maybe, yes. I was around 24, 25 at the time, so possibly. But luckily I've added a couple years since then.
Brilliant, Nikki. Thank you so much.
No problem. So of course, thank you very much. And if there's anything else you guys need, do let me know.